Hi, my name is Gracey Lewis, and I'm going to be giving you a brief overview of how to use a pedigree. For this pedigree, you're going to need to know that a square means male and a circle means female. If they're mating, they'll have a bar in between. If they have offspring, their children will be down below. If they have the trait that we are interested in, they will be shaded in to be the Rugrats edition. We are interested in looking at the phenotype of having freckles and not having freckles. We're going to first see if it is X-linked recessive. We have Grandpa Lou Pickles without freckles, so he's going to not be shaded, and Beatrix Trixie McGee with freckles, so she is a shaded circle. She's going to have two little D's, and he's going to have one big D and a Y because he does not have freckles. They each have children, Drew Pickles and Stu Pickles, both with freckles, so they'll have shaded in squares, and both little D's from their mom and Y from their dad. They both go off and have wives, Dee Dee Pickles, who also has freckles, so she's going to have two little D's and a shaded in, and Charlotte Pickles, who does not have freckles, so she's not going to be shaded in. Then they have children, Angelica, who does not have freckles because she gets a big D from her mom and a little D from her dad, and then Tommy Pickles, who has freckles because he gets a little D from his mom and a Y from his dad. So we can deem that this one is consistent. Next, we're going to see if the phenotype freckles could be X-linked dominant. Grandpa Lou does not have freckles, so he's going to have a little D, and Trixie does, so she'll have two big D's. I could give Drew a big D from his mom and a Y from his dad, being consistent with the phenotypes. Marrying Charlotte, she would have two little D's. That would give Charlotte a big D from her dad and a little D from her mom, giving her freckles, and that we can see she does not have freckles, so that would be not consistent. Next, we're going to see if the phenotype having freckles could be Y-linked. Already we say that Grandpa Lou does not have freckles, so we can already see that that would not follow in by carrying the trait from the dad. We're getting our freckles from our mom, so we can say that this is not consistent. Next, we are interested in seeing if freckle phenotype could be autosomal dominant. Grandpa Lou does not have freckles, so he is little d, and Trixie does, so she is big D, big D. They have Drew and Stu, who both could get a big D from their mom and a little D from their dad, making them have freckles. Stu goes and marries Dee Dee, who has freckles, so she's big D, and has Tommy, who could get a big D from their mom and a big D from their dad, having freckles. And then we have Charlotte, who marries Drew, who does not have freckles, so she's little d, and they have Angelica, who could get a little D from their mom and a little D from their dad, not having freckles. So we deem this is consistent. Lastly, we're going to see if the freckles phenotype could be autosomal recessive. Grandpa Lou does not have freckles, so he would be big D, and Trixie does, so she would be little d. And they would both produce heterozygous individuals that would not have the freckles. We can see that both of these individuals do have freckles, so this would be not consistent.